Coming up on UGTV, Board of Commission meeting of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas.
Carol, ready? All right. Carol, are you ready? Yes. All right. Good evening, everyone. We want to thank you for attending tonight's meeting. I'll call the meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Roll call. Walters.
Here.
Philbrook.
Here.
Bynum.
Here.
Walker. Townsend. McKiernan.
Here.
Gia. Johnson.
Here.
Kane. Markley.
Here.
Holland.
Here. This evening, the invocation is being given by Reverend Cynthia Smart of Mesa Memorial United Methodist Church. Please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us be in an attitude of prayer. God of all creation, we come before you today to give you honor and praise. You are worthy of our praise, Lord. You are the source of all that is good. You are the source of all of our blessings. Thank you for every gift that we have been given. We thank you for the opportunity to come and gather together this evening. We ask for your hand of blessing on this meeting. We ask that you would guide and direct our meeting so that it is full of wisdom, productivity, and respect of one another. Thank you for helping us to accomplish our work and our goals on this day. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and justice for all.
All right, that brings us to our consent agenda. Would anyone in attendance tonight, staff member or commissioner, like to set an item aside? Any item not set aside will be voted on with a single vote.
Move to approve all items as submitted.
Second.
All right, let the record show there is no one moving to the microphone to set an item aside. It is properly before us. Roll call.
Roll call. Walters. Aye. Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Motion carries 8-0. And Mayor, I would like to...
Your microphone is not on. There you go.
I would like to make an announcement that we do have a blue sheet this evening.
Thank you.
And it's the item under the administrator's agenda, which is item 1. And in your blue sheet packet, you should have a petition, a new resolution, and Exhibit A. And it all centers around setting the public hearing date for December 14th for the Legends Garage and Lawn CID.
Okay. Thank you. That brings us to our next agenda item is a public hearing for the Terna Vista Redevelopment District.
Mayor, I need to recuse myself of that.
Okay, thank you.
I have property involved in that.
Let the record show that Commissioner Philbrook is recusing herself from this discussion and vote. And I will turn it over to John Stevens with Economic Development to go over the project.
Good evening, Commissioners. Mayor John Stevens, Economic Development. I want to give you a brief overview of this project to orient you to lead into the public hearing. Here we go. All right. So what we're here for tonight is to hold a public hearing for the creation of the Terna Vista Redevelopment District TIF area and to vote on the enabling ordinance establishing that district. So keep in mind the next steps after tonight, should it be approved, will be to finalize the project plan, the development agreement, and possibly a CID district that all would be brought before this body to be considered at a later date. So to review the TIF process for the public, we adopted a resolution to set the public hearing. The commission did. We notified the clerk, the commissioners, the school district, and every owner and occupant of land within the district. We published the resolution giving public notice of tonight's meeting, and tonight we're here to conduct the public hearing and consider adoption of the ordinance. So the project, from a broad view, is at the southwest corners of State and College Parkway, and you can see it with the red star there. And the proposed site is approximately 38.6 acres. That includes the roadways internal to that district, as well as a state right-of-way that is deemed not part of public need or public use related to the right-of-way. So that would be encompassed in this TIF district. The current site includes rental townhomes and single-family units within that townhome community, as well as commercial property on the northern portion primarily. The site was determined by the developer through a blight study to be a blighted area for redevelopment. So here is the official TIF boundaries, 38.6 acres, as you can see, College Parkway and State Avenue, and continuing down through the area. So the developer is proposing to build approximately 280 upscale market rate apartment units with all of the associated amenities and parking with that. They would clear the property on the north portion in conjunction with clearing the south portion for the apartment units. And it would be made available for development of up to 85,000 square feet of commercial development. At this point, that piece of the project is not fully determined as to what all of the variable uses would be. Market demands are going to determine portions of that with tenants that would be beneficial to the tenants of this apartment complex as well as the neighborhood. Currently, the developer has indicated that they have approximately 98% of the properties that would be purchased within this district committed or under contract to purchase. And the developers are College Park developers, which they're here tonight. That consists of Steve Wood of Wood Development Group and Conrad Miller of the Miller Law Firm. And a piece failed to get on here, but the experience in apartment and commercial development with Wood Development Group actually extends to multiple projects, I believe about 22,000 some units that he's developed over his career. So in conclusion, before I bring up the developer for some statements, the staff would recommend approval of the ordinance to create this TIF district based on it conforming with the plan and review of the plan. And at this point, I would like to invite Conrad Miller and Steve Wood up, if it would be okay with you, to make a few remarks.
Absolutely.
All right.
Well, good evening. We appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. Steve Wood and I are the parties that have initiated this development. I don't really have too much more to add to the presentation of John. This is an area that we identified probably a year and a half ago as an area that was ripe for development. I think that's kind of the consensus we've had from staff and from the city, and it's as a side point, this is an area that I had a client try to develop it 25 years ago. So it's an area that's been long overdue for development. It was considered to be blighted. 8 of the 9 points to determine blight have been determined to be there. So we would be happy to answer any questions that the commission has, or any of the public might have. We have contacted nearly everybody in the district at some point, and have a strong level of support in that district. Commitments, contracts, and so like we said, I think there's 250 parcels of ground in that area, and I think we have probably 235 that are actually committed or under contract. There are a few that we don't, but that's why we think that will move forward. So we would take any questions that you have concerning the type of development, the apartments. Steve is the apartment guru and has developed apartments all over the country. And so if you have any questions concerning that, please ask.
So what I'll do right now is I'll open up the public hearing.
Okay.
And invite the public to speak. And then after we close the public hearing, I'll open up to the commissioners for additional questions. That's our usual process. So you're welcome to have a seat there, and we will begin the public process. The public process is this. We'll invite people first who would like to speak in favor of the project to come forward and speak. And then after that, we'll invite people who are opposed to the project to come and speak. At the end of each group, there are often people who come with a position but don't want to speak at the microphone. After I ask for everyone who would like to speak in favor, I'll ask everyone who is here who is in favor to please stand so the commission can see your show of support. Also, after I ask people to speak who are opposed to it, I'll ask everyone who's opposed to it to have an opportunity to stand so the commission can see who is opposed to it. So that way you can show your support or opposition to the project without necessarily having to come to speak. Anyone who would like to speak for or against will be given 3 minutes. You will be timed by the clerk, and she'll give you a warning at 1 minute and then ask you to stop. Please note you don't need to speak for all 3 minutes, but you're welcome to. So we will open it up at this point. So anyone who would like to speak in favor of this development, please come forward at this time to speak in favor. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor? All right, let the record show I see no one moving to the microphone to speak in. Would you like to?
I'm Cheryl Becker. I'm Cheryl Becker. My husband and I have owned property in this area for 40 years. I have 25 of the 120 townhomes, and we feel like it would be a benefit to the area, knowing what we know about the Homes Association and the neighborhood, so we are definitely in favor of it.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak in favor?
Hi, my name is Luis Perez, and I actually just moved to the neighborhood about a year ago. I own that house that's right before you come into the townhomes, and I think this is a really good idea that they're doing, and I'm in favor. And I would like to see this go through.
Thank you.
Michael Hayes and my wife Tammy, we own 4 units over there, and we're in support of the resolution. So.
Thank you.
I'm Shakina and my husband John here. We are in favor, full support of this plan. We think it'll be a great addition to the entire part of the neighborhood that they've been rebuilding.
Great.
Clear up State Avenue. It's just an eyesore at this point, and I think this would be a good idea.
Thank you.
Dominica Rodriguez and my husband Carlos Rodriguez. We are in favor of it, just knowing that we've lived there for a good 15 years and the neighborhood needs a lot of improvement, and think it would benefit our children as well as other children in there.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. I live with my father, and we just moved here, and he is completely comfortable with the new change of it, so he agrees to it as well.
Thank you. All right. Let the record show no one else is moving to, let the record show one more person is moving to the microphone.
Yeah, and they speed. I don't think any of them should be able to. I will.
Do you want to tell them? Explain the bus situation?
Yeah. I'm an old bus driver. That's the
Can
only
you
reason I'm saying.
name and address, please? And or name, just your name for the
Jackie
record.
Thompson.
Thank you.
We own the properties. The school buses, they go in. Anybody's been out there, the roads are so narrow. I mean, it's the structures of it's really bad. The bus drivers speed through them no matter how many times we call. And then we got the high school bus that pulls up to the stop sign. Everybody knows where I'm talking about. And they pull up to the left, let the kids out, and then they back up all the way past the road and then leave. Well, I should not think you would want to drop kids off and back up a bus. You back up the bus and then drop them off. So my fear, because I have been a bus driver, and we're so fortunate nobody's been ran over.
Thank you. All right. So now I'm seeing no one else come forward. If you are in favor of this and you did not want to speak, would you please stand? Everyone who's in favor, please stand. All right. Thank you all very much. You may be seated. I'll now open it up to folks who are opposed to this plan. If you would like to come forward and state your name for the record as well. Anyone who is opposed?
Mr. Mayor, my name is Francis Stumple. I've lived there since 1966. And I honestly like to know why you call it blighted.
Okay, that is a question I'll have our economic development team answer in a moment. But that's an excellent question. It is a legal term. But I will ask our team to, when we get through the hearing, I will make sure that they answer that question to explain how something is determined as blighted. Okay?
Because I'm happy there, I've lived there, I'm comfortable there, I have no problem with living there, so it's just that I like it there. Connie?
I think that's an explanation we will be glad to give to you. All right? Is there anyone else in opposition?
Good afternoon. My name is Walter Young. I live at 813 North 70th Terrace. I've been living there for the last 16 years. And like this gentleman just said, I don't understand the term blighted as well. When the properties there are being rented out for $800, $750 a month. So how is that blighted? I don't understand that. And I've met Mr. Wood and his associates. I've talked to him. And another problem that I have with this whole situation is they're wanting people to come and sign their properties over, but I haven't seen any checks. I haven't seen any money be put down on the line. They want you to sign your property away and wait until they get other investors to invest to get their money so then they can pay you off. I don't think that's right. If the city thinks they need this property, I'm fine with that. But I want my money up front. I don't think I should have to wait until they decide what they're going to do with this property. Because the property's not blighted, the neighborhood is not bad. I mean, it's been there for 30 years, everything's been going along fine. So all of a sudden, sure, we've seen the emerge of Amazon and other big corporations coming to this neighborhood, and we all understand that. And there's nothing wrong with the community progressing. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But I just think that we should be paid what our property is worth. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Please don't clap or respond. Thank you. Please maintain the decorum. Anyone else like to speak in opposition?
Good afternoon. My name is Reese Cooper. My husband, N.C. Cooper, is ill tonight. He can't be here. I've been living at 809 North 70 Street for 25 years. And I moved there to make that a retirement home. And so I'm a senior citizen now. I have to find somewhere else to reside. So I oppose.
Thank you. All right, let the record show no one else moving forward to speak in opposition, but I would like to give everyone who is opposed the opportunity to please stand and to show your opposition to the commission. If you're opposed, please stand at this time. Thank you very much. You may be seated. All right, we will close the public hearing. We did have a clear question about blight status. Mr. Stevens, if you can explain that. It is.
Thank you.
You're not the only ones that wonder about this.
No, it's a very good question. John Stevens, Economic Development. Blight study is a legal determination and legal definition. It includes such factors as age of the buildings, age of the infrastructure, obsolescence of the facilities, inadequate or outmoded design, physical deterioration. There are other factors such as social health, physical health, factors, crime factors, as well as any conditions which endanger life or property. So as Mr. Conrad said, or Mr. Miller said, there were, I believe, 8 of the 9 factors within the blight study conformed with it being designated legally as blighted.
And what is the point of doing a blight study on a property?
Doing the blight study helps to determine really the role with which the unified government should play in redevelopment of that area. Is it improving the area? Does it bode well for helping to stabilize and grow the neighborhoods or not?
Is it not a required part of setting a TIF district?
Absolutely. It is a legal requirement that we have to have conducted in order to establish a TIF district.
Thank you. I will also say how blight is interpreted varies. You might remember 20 years ago with the Speedway, all of those houses out there were determined blighted, right? If I were to be crass, I would say blight is a legal determination of being in the way of another project. That's what it is. So we can just call it what it is, but it is a legal process and it is a requirement for setting a TIF district. The commission cannot simply set a TIF district anywhere in the city that we want. There are criteria by state law about what qualifies for a tax increment financing district. And blight is one of the things that qualifies it to be TIFed, if you will, if I can use that as a verb. So the blight study is a legal term. There are boxes to check, and you can, it also doesn't necessarily fit our normal definition of looking at something saying that's blighted or it's not. It's a legal definition. It's not just based on an eyeball. And so just so you know, it is that complicated and really that crass.
Yeah.
Who does the blight study? There's an excellent question.
There are various companies. They are all done. I was getting ready to mention these are not, blight studies are not conducted by the unified government or any governmental entity. They're not conducted by the developer. They are third-party businesses, third-party organizations that have an expertise in studying of land use and all of the other urban development factors. They draft the blight study to conform with the legal legislation.
All right. Thank you. I think that answers that question. I do want to, I'm sorry, ma'am, the public hearing is closed, so I apologize. I do want to open it up to the commission now to ask, to make any comment or to ask any questions of the developers. Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor. This was a follow-up. I too thought the blight question was a good one. I wanted to follow up on a comment that was made about valuing the property and how owners or residents would be paid and that value. I think that was Mr. Young's comment. So could you follow up and give me some information?
That's a very good question. And from the very first meeting we had, and we've had several meetings with neighbors at the Homes Association, we told them that we were not there to, you know, give them pennies on the dollar for their properties. That each person would be dealt with with the circumstances that they need. So, you know, and one of the reasons for the TIF is that exact reason. If we went in and just paid the appraised value of what the county appraised them at, I mean, we wouldn't have any. I mean, we wouldn't have a problem at all. But you know, for instance, you know, Francis. I mean, we've talked and we've talked about what he needs he would need, and you know, those types of things. And we're trying to meet their needs, not our, you know, our bottom line. The contracts that we have are just like any other contract that you would in fact, it's kind of embarrassing. I hate to have Commissioner Walker even hear this, that it's a one-page contract. Basically says, you know, we'll pay you this, but it's contingent upon the approvals of this body. I mean, just like any other development contract you would have, you know, once they commit, we still have, you know, we've got a lot of heavy lifting to do. We've got to go through all the whole process. So the planning, the zoning, all of those processes, and at that end, you know, when we get that through, then we close. We're not doing this, you know, on the cheap. It's, you know, we've got years. I've got at least, you know, year and a half involved in it, and you know, thousands and thousands of dollars for blight studies and just, you know, getting the district outlined and land planning and those types of things. So once we get the approvals, we close, and that's, you know, but that's the only contingent we have. There's no, you know, we don't even have a title contingency. You know, we'll fix the titles if there's title problems, and there are title problems, but we'll fix the title problems. You know, we don't have any environmental. You know, it's a 60-year-old development, so there's bound to be environmental issues. Well, they don't have to worry about that. They don't have to worry about the condition of the property. They don't have to worry about. All they have to worry about is if we get the process through. You know, we're not waiting for, for some, some miracle to occur. It's not on a shoestring, but we have to get through this process first, and that's what they're contingent upon. So okay. Those are the only other contingents we have. And I would like to, just the other thing I would say is...
Let me make sure Commissioner Townsend's done. Do you have anything else?
Well, if the owners or tenants or renters, I'm not sure if these are all owners or tenants, but to go again to the issue about payment and when, if this contract is signed by, I'll just call the owner, at what point is payment made?
Payment is made within 30 days after approval by this body of the development. Okay?
So when we approve the development, when it's done with planning and zoning and we give final approval to the development and it's a go, when we finally say go, that you have 30 days to honor your contracts.
And right now we are looking at probably May of next year, and that's like a lightning bolt. And as you know, in the process is moving it through, and we've been pushing this through, to get it to this point so that we could honor our commitments to get those things closed next summer and get the project underway. And I would, I think another part of your question deals with the relocation of the tenants. As Ms. Becker said, there's a large degree, and one of the issues in the blight study was there's a large percentage of these that are rentals. I think out of the 250, I'm going to use 250 a round number. There's 18 that are actually owner occupied. Okay, so vast majority of them are either rentals or they're being sold under contract. And we've gone out of our way to try to make sure that we're taking care of any needs that any of them have, and that would include relocation for the tenants. Some of the contracts we have required, we're paying the compensation, and that would include relocation of the tenants. We will have an obligation to honor all those leases in any property that we might purchase. So we're not going to, have the wrecking ball out there on June 15th and expect all the tenants to be vacated. We're very very cognizant of the effect this has on the population there, on the residents. And we're trying to be as amenable as possible to their needs, and I think that's what if you talk to anybody that we've got contracts with or that we've talked with, I think that would be hopefully that's the takeaway from our interaction. So
money would be in hand before anyone was expected to move.
Oh, absolutely, and we've made it very clear to all the landlords, all the people that have signed contracts. Don't. There's. This is a big step tonight, but we still have zoning, we have planning, we have all those issues to go through. So we've made it very clear as don't do anything that don't start moving tenants out or don't start moving out. We'll give you plenty of notice. We generally 30 days before we close. We're going to say, hey, we're going to close, and then we will, work with them as to when we should vacate. And if they need more time, they need more time. I mean, this is a long process. So if we have to wait a month or two for one of the tenants to find another spot, then we'll wait. I mean, that's our commitment to them, our commitment to the residents.
Well, one of the things that I want to make sure too is there's a lot of children in this subdivision, and I want to. I would like, if this does go through, if the project is all approved, I don't want the kids to have to relocate during the school year. I like the idea of a May timeframe and giving them the opportunity to relocate during the summer so that the kids don't get pulled out of school mid-year. That would be a major hiccup for this development in my mind, is if we were pulling kids out of school. So, Commissioner Townsend, do you have anything else? No. All right.
Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. And I think you've already addressed the main two things that I was going to ask. One was about the payment. It sounds like we need to go ahead and approve this so that those property owners can get paid. The other issue, I think, though, is not going to be anything that's found within the context of the contract, and that is just the level of care and respect and dignity that you show our constituents. I'm all for development and anything that's going to improve the value of our property in Wyandotte County, but I just do want to make sure that we do this with a certain amount of dignity and respect for persons that have spent a good deal of time in their life in these areas, particularly as it relates to persons that may feel displaced. And I think you've addressed those things in concrete in terms of how that will happen. But the way in which we do things after it's all said and done and the dotted line is signed and all the property is moved, if people feel disrespected, we're going to hear about it. And I just want to make sure that that's communicated as well.
Thank you. We have made a real effort to do that. And just as an aside, Steve and I developed the IKEA site over in Merriam, those many years ago, and it's very similar. They had 67 people, and that we purchased property from. Basically the same contract. Everybody got paid. Everybody left, on the timetable that they wanted. So I try to, I've been through around here for a lot of years, so it doesn't do me any good to burn bridges, and it's not our intent. So,
thank you,
Commissioner Walker.
This redevelopment. This redevelopment, in my mind, in that area is long overdue. Amazon down the road was 10 years ago. I would have never thought that would have been the first development along this corridor. This corner has been primed for redevelopment at least as long as 10 years, because there were discussions to which I was privy in another capacity 10 years ago about what the prospects were for redeveloping that particular piece of property. Unfortunately, nothing came of that particular idea, and shortly thereafter the market collapse of 2008 killed redevelopment for some time after that. There's always going to be some degree of pain and difficulty when these projects occur. The houses that were taken out for the Speedway, a lot of people, had lived there a long time. It was a very difficult decision made by the then City Council. A lot of those houses were in remarkably good shape. The people, for the most part, left satisfied when they were paid. They did not get paid until the deal was done and the zoning was done and all the approvals were in place. That's just standard fare for a redevelopment deal. And the sooner people who are willing to go will get paid will be when everyone gets on board with the project and makes the best deal in their best interest. I am in favor of this 100%. I look forward to seeing that corner redeveloped. With that, I would like to make a motion to approve the Turner Vista Redevelopment District Ordinance.
Second.
All right, there is a motion and a second. I would like to make one clarifying piece, because I brought up the Speedway and you've mentioned the Speedway as well, Commissioner. The biggest difference between those is it was a city actually condemning the property and taking it. This is not a condemnation action. This is a free market transaction, which is a very different deal. This is not using the authority of eminent domain. This is a straight private transaction. So that's an important distinction. The city is not condemning anyone's property. Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you, Mayor. Could I still ask a question or two, even though we have a motion? And
You may.
Mr. Miller, could you tell us some examples of other developments? I know we spoke about the commercial project, but don't you have other apartment developments?
I will let Mr. Wood. Mr. Wood's been chomping at the bit over here to say something all night. So now I'll let him discuss his the developments.
Sure, you want to sit down? You can stand here if you want to.
I might go take a nap.
Good evening. First of all, thank you all for hearing us. Wanted to offer one follow-up comment on the point of the residences and the relocation of them. When we did Merriam Village over in Merriam at I-35 and Johnson Drive, after the TIF facility was approved and the bonds and so forth, we started a 120-day communication track with all the residents there. We sent out 120-day notices. Hey, we're about 3-4 months out from having your checks ready. No need to pack your bags. No need to rush or whatever. But just wanted you to know we're about 120 days out. Call us if you need us. Then we'd get it down to 90 days. And then we'd get it down to 60 days, and then 45 days. And then when we get to about 45 days, we'd say, now, there's going to be somebody come out from the city, and they're going to start taping off sections and putting up, improvements coming, and just, so we waltzed them along gently so that nobody came up and put them a certified envelope in their door and said, you got 10 days to move. That did not happen. And ladies and gentlemen, that will not happen here too. As we move the process along, working with Mr. Stevens and his qualified people, we'll be sending out communication notices well in advance and in phases. So just wanted to throw that. As far as apartment developments, I wanted to thank Mr. Stevens for those kind words. He put one too many zeros in there. He said 22,000. It's more like 2,200. We moved here to Kansas City from Maui in '03 and started a series of 11 different development projects, including Merriam Village, over the course of the last 14 years. 3 of them have been around the Kansas City area. Our most recent one is Metcalf Village, 270 units at 167 and Metcalf in South Johnson County. It's built. I partnered in with J.A. Murphy Group out of Knoxville, Tennessee. My home state is Tennessee. It's up, built, on time, on budget. We are about 2 months away from breaking ground for another project in the Northlands called Greens at Tiffany Springs, located at North Green Hills Road and Tiffany Springs Road, about a quarter of a mile from the Menards. My office co-developed Heights at Delaware Ridge, along with Tom Smith, Gold Crown Properties. We finished up that project in the year 2014, 228 market rate units, all leased up, built on time, on budget, no problems. And so as far as Terna Vista is concerned, we've been very careful to work our numbers, our cost estimate numbers and projections and so forth, working with the unified government staff from our preferred and likely contractor, Barstow Construction. Site improvements, public improvements, what are they going to cost? We don't want to just reach up in the air and make a financing request without any traction to it. So our numbers are good, and this is tied to relationships that we have with the builder and their subcontractors. We've already turned in those numbers. We have numbers for our vertical contract, our market research for the rents and the sizing of the rents and all that has been pretty thorough. And so we feel confident that we have a good team of disciplines put together, civil, architectural, building, and so forth. We just need some money. And once we get the money, we'll move on ahead. So Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I
Commissioner?
appreciate that.
Anything else?
No, my only other question is more for Mr. Stevens, just confirmation. Under the TIF, then all current property taxes that are paid now, that dollar amount of property tax that's collected today would continue to be paid?
Correct, Commissioner.
Only the increment would be abated?
Absolutely.
Okay.
This isn't tax increment financing, so it's just the new value created by this development that would be captured.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Seeing no further comment from the commissioners, roll call.
Roll call. Walters. Bynum.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Kiernan.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, the project is approved for the TIF district only. The development plan will come forward. There are multiple more steps before this is complete. Everyone is welcome to stay for the remainder of our meeting. You're also welcome to not stay, but we would ask you to exit quietly so we can continue our meeting while you're stepping out. All right.
When I oppose, I'm not really,
It expedite the process. All right, we're going to resume our meeting. If you could please exit quietly and remove. Thank you. If you can please exit quietly so we can continue our meeting. All right, that brings us to the administrator's agenda to set a public hearing date for December 14th, 2017 for the Legends Garage and Lawn CID 1 and 2. Again, we are only setting the public hearing date, but Mr. Stevens, I believe you have a short presentation. And there's about an inch thick stack of blue sheet. Mr. McKiernan, do you have something right now? Not yet. All right.
Okay. I want to open, this John Stevens Economic Development, want to open on this in regards to the blue sheet. The blue sheet was issued this afternoon, and I must apologize for it. It is not a material change to the petition. Our bond counsel notified us today that they felt that there may be some procedural issues related to the petition as drafted. So we asked the developer to draft a new petition to ensure that it conforms with state law related to this. But once again, it does not change the material issues at hand. So what we're here for tonight, as the mayor mentioned, is to set the public hearing for December 14th to establish a new Community Improvement District, or CID, within the Legends Village West Shopping District. So what this would do is it would create a new CID district that would total 1% assessment, and it would terminate, or thereby we would then terminate the existing 0.6 or 0.6 assessment. The CID would be designated to fund new Phase 2 adjacent parking garage, and then common area amenities and improvements. So once again, tonight is just to set the public hearing related to this issue. So the project site, I don't need to tell you where the Legends are. This is the CID area, excluding the theater associated, so you can see the boundaries. The district boundaries would not change in any substantial manner other than in the one way designated. Additionally, this would enable the developer, as they state within this new CID, to create west lawn improvements on the west end of the shopping center, as well as build the garage and apartments that was designed in the master plan for Phase 2. So this is the latest rendering. This is the latest rendering of the project related to the garage and the apartments. I must also mention that as we work through the development agreement and all the other things, the CID will only go to fund the garage, of which 350 spaces are designated for public use. It would also would only go towards approved charges related to improvements to the Legend Shopping District to maintain its competitiveness. So this is the lawn, as the developer is calling it. This is the redevelopment of the West End in order to attract new tenancy and retain the existing tenants in, as they stated to Commissioner McKiernan's ED&F committee, a hyper-competitive retail market. So once again, next steps are to set the public hearing date, and then once again, after the public hearing date is set, we would then come before you with the development agreements related to this. There will actually be two, as well as the final project plans, budgets, and everything else associated with it. With that, that's the end of my presentation.
I would like to point out the commission has been very clear that the CID would not be used for investment in the apartments themselves. We have a lot of market rate apartment going on right now, and there has been no appetite by this commission to subsidize market rate apartments at the Legends. One of the things that the CID does do is it allows for additional parking at the Legends that was lost with the hotel and the apartments. That it does allow for actually it'll be a net increase in parking, which is an ongoing issue at the Legends, and alleviating that parking with public money is an appropriate use. But we've been very clear we would not go into the apartment with the CID money. Also, the West Lawn development, we will have a lot more detail from the developer on the 14th, so that the developer can present what that's going to look like. Tonight's reason for the blue sheet is just the bond council's recommendation in terms of how we word it, so that it's actually valid. So those are the issues I'd like to put out there. We do have two folks here, Commissioner McKiernan and then Commissioner Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two frustrations on this, Mr. Stevens. The first one is well known to you. I am really frustrated when we get blue sheets as we sit down to a meeting. The first time this came to EDF, or Economic Development Finance Standing Committee, the whole thing was blue sheeted about 4:45 that afternoon. We hadn't seen this until we sat down at the table. Then when we sat down at the table, my second frustration is we were told by the developer that even though the request for action said approve and move forward, that there really was no request to approve and move forward. So this breaks out of the typical trajectory for projects to move. Shouldn't this project have come back to Economic Development and Finance Standing Committee first? That committee then recommend that it move forward, even if it's simply to set the public hearing date for establishing or for changing the CID. And so I'm a little frustrated that it has come straight to full commission rather than going back to committee, because when I left our meeting of 2 months ago, I was under the impression that they were going to rework their proposal and come back. They didn't. Now we're here.
Well, that is it is an argument for the mayor and the chair of the committee to talk. And I apologize for that, because I was working on a process that, because this had been in front of the full commission before, to bring it back to the full commission, that the information session that you all had was not action oriented, it was informational. So there is no intent to circumvent process here, but simply to move things forward. But I hear your frustration, I appreciate that, and I will pass on to the new mayor not to do that again. Mr. Walker.
You mentioned, Mayor, I don't have a great deal of confidence in this project or the developer's ability to keep the funds separate. I would love to see the document, you know, before the night of the meeting, and have the provisions in the development agreement that demonstrate how this is going to be accomplished. I'm just not going to vote for it otherwise. I just don't have any confidence that there isn't a flim-flam going on here. I don't know what else to call it. It may not be, probably isn't, but I'd like to see a document that gives the unified government recourse in the event that things don't go as it's being represented. That's what I'm trying to say.
I think it would be helpful to communicate to the developer a deadline in terms of when we'd like to see that. It goes on the agenda the Monday before, but if we set a deadline for December 7th, which is a week before, then we could set that deadline for the development agreement, for the staff agreement, for the attorneys to agree on what that development agreement looks like, which would give a week for the commissioners to review it before it came for a vote. Commissioner, would that be adequate for you?
Well, that and an opinion from our, I suppose, bond counsel or our chief counsel.
Yes.
Expressing my concerns that if money is that's not the right word, misapplied to the apartments, that we have recourse, meaningful recourse against the developer for those funds.
Absolutely.
I want somebody's name on a piece of paper whose butt's on the line.
Okay.
Put it blunt.
You want some clawback provisions.
I think that's an important piece. We have already begun working on the development agreements. There will actually be 2 development agreements, one associated with amending the garage apartment development agreement, and then one new development agreement related to the Legends development revitalization. We've been very clear, and in working with our CFO, we've been very clear in very diligently reviewing the finances as well as what are recoverable expenses under the CID and what are clearly non-recoverable expenses. We will make sure that that is codified in the development agreements.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you. Just wanted to, Commissioner Walker's comment was raising a question with me that I think has been answered, but that is, it's a CID, therefore that is a tax dollar that would flow into our coffers.
Correct.
And flow out to the developer upon his submitting documentation of what he's being repaid for. And wouldn't that be the way that we make sure the money is applied appropriately?
That is absolutely true, Commissioner. The taxes are collected as sales tax. Those are held in accounts that are then verified through the state, because the state collects sales tax in many instances. It comes back. Then they have to issue certified costs to us for review and approval. So that is how the distribution of that CID will. And I would also must mention within the petition, if you notice, you will also see that there is a cap of $26.5 million associated through the life of this total CID that will be codified within the development agreements as well.
Commissioner McKiernan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Given clarification that I received and given the fact that this is simply a resolution to set a public hearing, it is not approval of the CID, nor is it approval of the project itself, I would move to approve the resolution as submitted.
Second.
It is moved and seconded. Commissioner Walker.
So when we get
Can you turn your microphone on, please, sir?
When we get the cost certified, who on our team audits it?
When COEs or cost certifications are submitted, we have a third party that reviews those, provides their recommendations within what is eligible and non-eligible expenses, and then someone in my office does the final review of those, and then those are submitted to my desk for approval, and then they go to the county administrator for final authorization. Okay.
All right. I do, the motion and second is before us. I will say one more thing. We owned the hotel, and we invested significant money in the hotel to make sure it was up to date at the 10-year mark, to make sure that the hotel was viable. We were ended up able to sell it. We owned that theater, and then at the 10-year mark, we were able to sell that theater because it had been so successful. One of the things that I know about retail is it's under duress right now, and it needs to be a destination. And building apartments around it to bring more shoppers close by, and to redo the West End as more of an event space like you would see at Power and Light, is the kind of development that's going to keep this development vibrant. The Legends is more than 10 years old. There has to be a reinvestment in it And I think this is the kind of development, because without the legends, most of what's happening in Village West doesn't happen. And protecting the legends as an investment for everything that happens around it, I think is very important. So I do want to see the details, and we are going to see it. I think we've a December 7th deadline, if you would communicate that to the developer. We're not waiting until the last minute to do last minute revisions. We've got to have it ahead of time, and I think that 3-week deadline is ample time to make that happen. So with that, seeing no more comments or questions, roll call.
Roll call. Walters.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Barkley.
Aye.
Motion carries 8-0.
All right, public announcement. There will be a meeting of the Public Building Commission following the full commission meeting. Everyone will want to stay tuned for that. It will be a riveting meeting in its own right. We now are adjourning the Board of Commissioners and reconvening as the Land Bank Board of Trustees. We have the consent agenda before us. Anyone in the audience, commissioner, or staff who would like to set an item aside is welcome to step to the microphone at this time. Any item not set aside will be voted on by a single vote.
Move to approve all items as submitted.
Second.
Let the record show no one is moving to the microphone. It is properly before us. Roll call.
Roll call. Walters.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Barkley.
Aye.
Item carries 8-0.
All right, that concludes our commission meeting. We are adjourned. We will ask those who are involved in the Public Building Commission to please stay. Of course, everyone's welcome to stay for the Public Building Commission. It usually lasts between 7 and 10 minutes. We are adjourned. I can wait. Are you ready? All right. I'm calling to order the Public Building Commission, and I would ask our Chief Legal Counsel to advise the public what the Public Building Commission is and our next steps.
Thank you, Mayor. Kansas statutes adopted in 1965 authorized any city or county to create a public building commission for the purpose of acquiring land and to build public facilities. The Public Building Commission is authorized by state law also to issue bonds to finance and pay for those public facilities. And pursuant to this authority, this state law authority, the City of Kansas City, Kansas established a Public Building Commission in 1968, which was reestablished as Unified Government Public Building Commission after consolidation in 1998. Excuse me. And by Unified Government Ordinance, the Commission consists of 5 members. The Mayor CEO, Mark Holland, the Chair of the Economic Development and Finance Standing Committee, Brian McKiernan, the County Administrator, Doug Bach, who is unable to be here tonight, the Chief Financial Officer, Kathleen Von Aiken, and the Chief Counsel, myself, Ken Moore. The Public Building Commission was used to finance the construction of City Hall in 1973 is also used to finance the construction of the Wyandotte County Jail and Justice Complex in 1988. And today, the Public Building Commission is taking action to authorize financing and construction of a new juvenile detention facility and also improvements to the existing adult detention facility in the Wyandotte County Courthouse.
All right. So that is our single item.
That's correct.
All right. So the item is, the intent is to use the Public Building Commission to finance the construction of a new juvenile services facility, which will get it's already been approved by the commission to move forward with it. This is the financing tool for it. So the discussion, the presentation has all already been done. This is simply the financing tool portion of that, and it is new to having it on television, so we kept it here so the public can see the proceedings. So we do need a motion to use this tool for financing.
I move to approve the resolution as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it has been moved and seconded to proceed with the funding of the financing for the juvenile facility. Roll call.
Roll call, Holland,
Aye.
Kiernan,
Aye.
Von Ashen,
Aye.
and Moore.
Aye. Mayor,
And-
we also have the item to approve the minutes of the last public.
Oh, we do want to approve the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes of the last meeting held on December 1st, 2016.
Second.
All right, I do not believe we need roll call for that. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Let the record show that it was unanimous. Any other items? All right. I thought it would take 7 minutes. It took less. We are adjourned. Thank you.